Well, good morning. I'm Jeff Coleman.
And I'm Deborah Pinkerton. Welcome to Morning Light, I should say. Will they or won't they? All eyes are on the U.S. House this afternoon as they are expected to vote on the Senate-approved funding compromise. Now, this version does not include an extension to health care subsidies.
And House Speaker Mike Johnson is working closely, of course, with the White House to get a deal done. Republicans hold a narrow majority, but it's unclear how many Democrats or conservative Republicans will support the measure. We will keep you updated.
Yeah, it's something we'll be watching.
Like hawks. Well, if there's a lesson to be learned from this record-shattering government shutdown, it's that no one knows who or what to believe. A University of Pennsylvania study shows all too often the line between fact and sensationalism has real consequences. I'll ask the Morning Light panel to help us come up with a better way to interpret the day's headlines.
And here's a preview of what's coming up later in the show. Touching hearts worldwide. The mission of the Tide is to lead as many people as possible into a life-transforming relationship with Jesus. Learn how donating new and gently used shoes can help promote literacy in India and support businesses around the world.
Incredible work they're doing. Incredible work. Well, 70% of Americans die from a chronic disease, with heart disease far outpacing all other causes of death. Homicide, pandemics, even terrorism don't make the top 10 reasons for dying. But a University of Pennsylvania study released earlier this year suggests you wouldn't know this by the news coverage. For example, the ratio of stories about terrorism was 36 to 1 death. Heart disease, just one story for every 323 deaths. The conclusion? News coverage on death is all too often more sensational than accurate.
And accuracy is so important.
Incredibly important. Yeah.
Well, 36% of deaths were heart disease related and less than 1% of deaths were connected to terrorism. The decision by news organizations to lead with the more sensational causes of death creates a predictable gap in awareness of actual health risks.
Sensationalism gets more clicks, but it causes a different level of anxiety with people.
That is right.
And then not an accurate one. So this raises an even bigger question. If coverage, whether from traditional nightly news to TikTok videos and everything in between, doesn't provide an accurate lens to view the news, how can we be better consumers? Is there a way to check the facts, the tone, even the language used in the headlines before we respond with anxiety or fear, to be wise, to discern? As Christians, do we have an even bigger responsibility to get it right? Our Morning Light panel will weigh in. Pastor Dave Biser is back, Cynthia Lyons, and Joe Slack. What a trio. It's good to have you all together this morning.
Good morning.
And we saw you yesterday on Veterans Day. Thank you again for your service.
Absolutely, you bet.
You're off of a cardiac event.
I am, yeah. So obviously, what you said this morning affected me personally.
Yeah.
And I don't think I'm the only one here that that's true for, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you've been traveling recently,
Right.
and you meet people who hear about America, and you would think, based on the news coverage, right, that every school district in America has a weekly or monthly school shooting, that there's chaos in all of the streets. When you look at crime rates are falling. There are all kinds of indicators that say we're not who the headlines say we are. Yeah. Why is there such a big disconnect? And then Sunday morning, when you meet people who are coming to church and they're talking about what's in the headline, how do you walk them off that cliff?
Sure, yeah. I think when you ask that question, it's so loaded, but it's not one that's new. You can go all the way back to Thomas Jefferson and Adams and their arguments back and forth and putting in the newspaper.
Juicy stuff.
We've been doing this for 250 years, right? So you would think we would do it better by now, but we don't. What we do, I think money feeds the system. And because of that, we get news in sound bites. And because we're not good at filtering that all out, we believe what we see, we believe what we hear. And so it really is, it takes a responsible citizenry to make sure that we're looking at the news appropriately. And it takes, in my mind, it takes a person of faith to filter that out. I love what Ronald Reagan said, trust but verify.
Yeah.
Right? Trust but verify.
And the wall came tumbling down.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So Cynthia, I mean, all of these issues, when you look at that wild list, you have terrorism at the bottom, but our fears are so connected to terrorism. There's a great deal of sensationalism around certain populations moving in, assuming that terrorism is on the rise and everyone is vulnerable. But the biggest vulnerability we have is us, right? Inside are these chronic diseases, and there's a new emphasis in some ways on chronic disease. How do you filter it out, as what Dave is saying, as a believer? How do you filter out what is juicy sensationalism, what people are texting you, hey, Cynthia, did you see this? And what you know to be true?
Yeah, that's a really tough question. Especially I deal with a population of, teenagers for the most part of my life. How does it affect my life? What is it that's really going to help me or hurt me through the day? What Dave said is exactly right. Some of the things that we hear about have been going on for years, but we heard about it less because the news outlets or the media outlets were less when I was growing up. So things weren't carried the way that they are today. I really think it's difficult to verify information, because if you like ABC News, well, you don't turn to another news station. If you like NBC, you don't. That's what you listen to, and that's what you get it from. Because they sing
our song in the...
Yes. Well, and I also think, we talked about this a little earlier. News has become entertainment, not gospel. And so there's so many different things. In the middle of hearing, about attacks in Israel, we're talking about steals and deals for the day.
Right.
And so when you're mixing and matching like that, it's so difficult to even try to concentrate on what might be true.
So, Joe, what Cynthia is describing is almost this ping pong ball, back and forth between peace and anxiety. And every second we're invited to be anxious about something new. We're talking here. Right. And then when we step off this set, there will be a headline that we missed in the last 20 minutes that we've got to go figure out, should we be concerned about it or not? Sure. How do you help young people, especially when they're seeing something unfiltered through TikTok, without the benefit of a 75-year-old news anchor telling them what to think about it? Yes. How do they do that?
Yeah, it's such an interesting dichotomy, right? Because you have, on the one hand, a great distrust of institutionalism and belief in the things that we used to trust, right? If it was on the news, it was true and it was good and it was right. And so young people today have a distrust in that. And yet, at the same time, they will go to TikTok, they'll find somebody or something that they believe in, that they trust in, and they'll lock into everything that one says.
Including conspiracy.
Right. And so it can be wild, it doesn't have to have base, it's crazy. And so I think what you see happening is you see this disconnect between what's going on in reality and an understanding of what's happening in our own heart. Yeah. Right. You've got, we want to trust something, and we would like it to be ourselves, but we know by nature that we're fallen and that we're broken. And so we know we can't trust that. So we look to something else, and we're fearful to look to God to be the one that authors that and directs that.
Why?
Because he's going to tell us that we're broken and remind us of that truth. And the last thing we want to do is acknowledge that, and acknowledge that I can't get myself out of this situation. I can't help myself. And so young people in particular want to reject that and turn to something else that's going to make them feel good. It's almost like the Bible said that once, like we're going to listen to things that tickle our ears rather than hear the truth, and that we're going to turn to those things. And news is a perfect example of that.
All right, so a Sunday morning, you walk in, people are expecting the pastor to talk about the news headlines and not always go to the Bible. We would rather hear about, tell me what to think about this, but it's not actually, it seems like, helping me interpret these events. It's actually, I just want you to hear that you agree with me in my position on these issues. Scripture seems to turn all of that upside down, doesn't it, as a filter?
Absolutely. It's completely 180. That's not why I listen and read and study and obey and strive to be a disciple. I'm learning how to live in this world, not learning what the world can teach me about God. It's not backwards. I want God to tell me how to operate and function in this world, because he's the one who knows all, sees all, has all, does all, is all. And so I'm going to go to the source of all, right? And so that's my grounding. And then from there, teach me how to live in a world that's chaotic based on that grounding.
Okay, so is it easier to be in some ways a Christian because you have these foundational truths today, and you have the news here, but every news story that's chaotic has an answer, right? The budget crisis has an answer in Scripture. The flight delays, Scripture teaches us about time, about patience, all of these things.
Yeah,
is it easier or harder?
Sure. So you're making me smile because, it's a great question. Is it easier? Jesus said to his disciples, it's not going to be easy, right? Is Christianity easy? No, it never has been, right? And by design from the very beginning, it's a challenge. Because we're fighting the flesh, we're fighting us, we're fighting, as Joe said, we're fighting our own hearts, right? And because of that, it's not an easy journey, but it's one worth taking, right? Yeah. So one worth taking.
It's easy here. Isn't it easy here? Really. Because we're among friends. Sure. We're among a group of people.
We agree on the facts.
We agree on the facts, and we agree that the answers are right here in front of us in our Bible. The road to difficulty comes when we step out of the Morning Light studio. And we step into a world of, hopefully a lot more believers than non, but, that's where the difficulty is.
But a world of fear and anxiety.
I know, and that's where I think we have to really make sure, you talk about, you're on your soapbox again. Well, I want to be on a soapbox for truth, and this is what it is. We were never promised easy. But we were given answers through the difficult times. And where are the biggest lessons? The biggest lessons don't come in easy. The biggest lessons come in hard. And sometimes that's hard news. I don't want to hear terrible news, but sometimes that happens in a broken world.
Let's do an exercise here in the last minute we've got. So you've got the budget shut down, and people want to get home for Thanksgiving, and they're not sure they're going to be able to travel, and they're not going to be sure if they have the SNAP benefits to have a Thanksgiving meal, and just on and on and on. There are legitimate reasons today people are fearful. Put that headline through the lens of Scripture as he's describing, and give us the answer that Jesus would have us. How would we approach that headline?
All right, Joe, here we go.
Yeah, that's an easy question. Thanks, Jeff. Well, I think in the end, right, when we're looking at news with stuff, we have to remember that it's always coming from a source. It's always coming from a bias. And the thing, you said we trust the facts, and that's why it's easy to believe us around here. I think what we trust is that we trust the basis that our lives are built around. We trust the person. And so we can let that go, right? When we're looking at the news, we don't trust that in the same way. So when you're looking at a headline like that, you have to remember that there's truth in all of it, but there's also a slant, there's a bias, there's an agenda that whoever's presenting those things to you is trying to accomplish. Here's who we blame if you don't have this. Here's who's the problem for this or that. Rather than saying, hey, these are real legitimate things and they have difficult solutions, but we have a God that has the answer. And we have a God that has a good plan. And if we turn to him, he will help us navigate. Not necessarily easy, but he will always bring us through.
It seems like you're saying trust the person of Jesus, not Congress today? Interesting. Hey, listen, I subscribe to something called the Pour Over every morning, which has been very helpful, which is it's headlines, and then it puts it through the lens of Scripture. Always helpful for me, at least, to get the morning started right. Well, coming up on Morning Light, donating your old souls could impact the souls of people living around the globe. The Tide is here to share details about its annual shoe drive. Up next, you're watching Morning Light right here on Lighthouse TV.
Welcome back. The Tide is committed to spreading the gospel through Christian media broadcasts in multiple languages around the world. Each year, the Tide collects new and gently used shoes. Here to tell us more about the project is the Mobilization and Engagement Coordinator, Erlinda Hand. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having us.
Remind us about the Tide.
Sure. We are an international media ministry, and we share the good news of Jesus in multiple countries around the world, and we do this through indigenous pastors who will share through radio, television, all sorts of different media, the gospel message.
And it's all done in their own language, which is amazing.
It is.
Let's talk about the shoe drive.
Yes. So the shoe drive is, we collect new and gently used shoes, and we do this through multiple organizations, churches get involved, businesses get involved. We've had schools, and just the community comes together to donate.
And this kicks off in January.
It does.
So what happens with the shoes once they're collected?
Sure. So the shoes will be collected. We will bring them to the Tide office, and they will get banded and bagged. And Cubes Moving and Storage of Chambersburg is allowing us to use one of their cubes to be able to store them, which is a huge blessing. It doesn't take up all of the office space because that is a lot of shoes. The shoe drive got started in 2022. That was our first year to collect shoes. We collected 4,500 pairs that year, and that was about 24 churches participating. It's grown each year, and last year, this last shoe drive, we collected more than 7,500 pairs, and that was 50 different venues were participating.
Wow. How did it get started? Why did it get started?
So we were looking for an opportunity to be able to fund our literacy classes in India, and this just became available, and so we decided to give it a whirl, and here we are today.
Tell us more about the literacy classes in India.
Okay, so we have 30 different classes. They range from teaching children to adults. Our Boots on the Ground in India will provide those classes to them, and it's for villagers who might not otherwise be able to learn how to read and write in their own language.
And what's the impact been?
We have heard great stories of people being able to come out of those classes being literate and being able to better their lives.
And just the reaction that you have received.
So lots and lots of people in our area have gotten behind the shoe drive, obviously. Being able to collect 7,500 pairs, it's allowed us to be able to share what the Tide does around the world with more people. It helps us be able to reach more people for the gospel.
So if someone wants to donate shoes, where can they find out more information?
They can go to thetide.org/shoes. We are in the process of finding venues who will be able to provide a collection box, whether that's a church that collects them, or we also look for businesses in the area that will put a collection box, and we try and make it as easy as possible for them. If they just give us a call and tell us the box is full, we'll be happy to come pick those up and bring them over to our office and get started on banding and bagging, because that is a big feat.
And once again, that kicks off in January.
It does.
Erlinda, thanks so much for being with us and sharing this with us.
Yes.
Coming up next on Morning Light, the Tide sends teams on mission trips throughout the year. The executive director recently returned from Rwanda. He will share the details with us right after the break. In our last segment, you heard about the Tide's annual shoe drive, but did you know the nonprofit also engages in other activities like discipleship, leadership development, church planting, and short-term mission trips? Here to share more about his recent trip to Rwanda is the executive director, Don Shenk. Thanks for being here with us.
Thank you, Deborah.
So you go all around the world talking to Christian leaders. Let's talk about your most recent trip.
Certainly. Our trip to Rwanda was a little bit different than our traditional mission trips, because instead of taking a team to do ministry, we were going to participate in the ABR Media Continental Convention. ABR was originally Africa by Radio, but because of the diversity of media outreaches, it's now ABR Media. It's a network of local, regional, and international ministries that are all focused on sharing the gospel across Africa. And it's a wonderful opportunity for member organizations to come together at the convention. There's times of learning together, worshiping together, sharing together, and networking. And we have 3 different countries in Africa where we have active partnerships, and that's Cameroon, Mozambique, and Zimbabwe. So we arranged for delegates from those ministries to join us at the convention. And so it was kind of the Tide Africa team building exercise. They got to know each other better, but they also got to interact with other gospel-centered ministries from across Africa. They got to learn and benefit from the sessions. There were some fantastic teaching sessions, good discussion times, and networking times. And the overall goal there was, for the convention, was to get a bigger picture of what God is doing across Africa by having everybody share what their various ministries are experiencing. And then for us to go away with a sense of how we can all be cooperating together to build God's kingdom in the hearts of people across Africa.
And what is the feeling there in Africa? How is the gospel received?
There's diversity, because there are some areas where the gospel has really taken root and the church is growing strong. There are other areas where there's incredible opposition. And one of the keynote sessions on this convention was dealing with or helping ministries understand how to minister under times of persecution, because persecution is moving southward in Africa. It's unfortunate, and a very unfortunate statistic that we learned at this convention was that last year, 9 out of 10 believers who were martyred for their faith were in Southern Africa.
Wow. Oh my goodness. So we need to pray for the people there. Now, you also were in Thailand earlier this year. What is the feeling there in Thailand?
In Thailand, we went there with a twofold purpose. One was to encourage our boots on the ground and observe their ministry operation, but also to engage with them in ministry and to walk beside them and help to minister out in the house churches and the emerging leaders that they're discipling. And as we went through that, I was so encouraged and inspired by their enthusiasm and commitment and the diverse ways they're using media to make disciples in that region. And really, what impressed me most perhaps was the depth of the spiritual depth among the house churches and the emerging leaders that they are discipling. And I think that's an indication of good, strong discipleship. And Thailand is a Buddhist stronghold. People are deeply entrenched in it. And when believers come to Christ, discipleship helps them stand firm against opposition. And so although we're not having huge numbers of people respond to the gospel, the solid discipleship there, I believe God is using that to establish a firm foundation for future church growth.
Wonderful. And talking about church growth in Kosovo, share with us what's taking place there.
I was disappointed that I couldn't go and participate, but the fledgling congregation that is pastored by our radio pastor in Kosovo just recently was able to have a dedication ceremony for their own facility. They got a piece of land, were able to construct a church and ministry outreach. When we started working with them 10 years ago, they were meeting in a small storefront facility. They've outgrown that. And it's important to have that place of ministry that can accommodate them, and it enhances their ability to reach out to the community. And so although it's not directly related to the media side of ministry, it does provide a venue for them to meet, a facility where they can provide community outreach activities, and also has the space for discipleship and leadership training, which is important for Pastor Yeton as he meets with listeners from outlying areas, and he's seeking to establish more small congregations and to grow the church there throughout Kosovo.
Yeah, that's wonderful news. Thank you so much for being with us and sharing this with us today.
Thank you. We appreciate the opportunity.
You're welcome. To learn more about the Tide or to donate toward the organization's shoe drive, check out thetide.org. Stay with us. We're back right after the break.
Welcome back. Well, it's a big day in Washington, D.C. The House of Representatives reconvenes later today. Whatever happens will likely determine the status of thousands of delayed and canceled flights. Maybe some of you have experienced that already. The cost of health insurance, what kind of Thanksgiving many of our neighbors will be experiencing today. So many of you have been involved in missions of mercy, making sure people have enough during this crisis. But it's a lot of pressure on congressmen and congresswomen. There's a mountain of differences between both sides, a mountain that will take divine intervention to move. Some of you might think your prayers won't do much in a situation like this. God says otherwise. He says, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you'll say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it'll move. Nothing will be impossible for you. Look, we're a sophisticated, wealthy, technologically savvy country. But sometimes I think we're almost too sophisticated for prayer, and certainly more powerful than the tiny little mustard seed. But when 435 members of the House of Representatives meet today, each looking at that big mountain in 435 different ways, the only way through it is over. And the only way to see it without bias and hate is through God's eyes. So pray for Congress. Pray for humility. Pray that they'll see clearly, regardless of the political consequences or all the angry emails or texts or calls they'll get back home. And then let's watch the mountain move. That's what we're praying for today in Washington, D.C., and for peace in our hearts around this country. For Deborah and the entire Morning Light team, I'm Jeff Coleman. Thanks for your time today. Go check on your neighbors. God willing, we'll see you again real soon.